still really having problems with this anchor. We haven't been able to leave all day. It's now 2:30 and the anchor is really firmly jammed under a rock. So Paul is still trying to find a way of releasing
it. Sometimes I think about the good days we had, but there were bad days too.
I'm Nicole.
And I'm Paul.
And with our motley crew of numerous children from our blended family, we sail around the Mediterranean on Savvy of London, our XP55 sailing yacht. Please tick that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and thank you for joining us on this journey. We pick up from the last episode where we're unsure if we're going to be able to leave or not because you got the anchor. The anchor got stuck underneath a rock.
I got the anchor stuck. Yeah. So sometimes when you anchor and the wind changes direction overnight, we were in about 8-10 meters of water, just not far from the Marmanor, and the anchor chain overnight, the winds went light, it swelled around 360 degrees, and the chain wrapped itself around a great big bommy, as they're known, or big rock, and pulled itself tight and sawed itself in. And then the wind started blowing at 30 plus knots again, which makes it really difficult to raise the anchor. Tried for a couple of hours, couldn't do it. And then we spent a couple of days next door to the Marmanor because we couldn't leave until there was enough of a let up in the wind for me to dive down and try and fix it.
And I've since found out that two lots of friends, they've also got their anchor stuck in the exact same place.
Spot, yeah. Somebody did mention there are a couple of spots that are a bit dodgy. Anyway, we were stuck. So we had 2 days on the edge of the Marmanor, going to the 2 restaurants that were open because it's quite early in the season. And I had to dive down and try and release it, which was interesting. That is not easy.
So Paul has got a weight tied to a rope. It's now directly on top of the anchor, probably about 25 feet down, he thinks. So he's now going to dive down and try and manually unstrap this anchor. Hey Isla, just come back because I might have to release this. Come back to away from that rope.
What's... Let it all go? The whole thing?
I've got a little bit of air as well. Because refill your air bottle. Unless you've got a special license, which Paul doesn't have, he just knows how to dive. Careful, girls.
Right, I need you to pull this rope in and do a figure of 8 locking knot on that cleat there.
Okay, so pull it in as tight as possible.
The red rope.
Yeah, as tight as possible.
Take it off of that cleat, pull it all the way through. Having managed to find the worst rock in the bay somehow and wrap the chain around it at night with winds that were spinning 360 degrees, it was quite an endeavour to get it out. You can see me here diving down to try to attach a rope so I could winch against the anchor itself and then run the chain around this rock that it had sawn itself into. The water wasn't particularly warm, it was quite a long way down and it took me quite a while. Lots of using the bow thruster in the engine, manoeuvring the boat around, and after a couple of hours on the second day there was a eureka moment as the anchor broke free. And off we went to Alicante to the most beautiful sunset.
Arriving into Alicante, beautiful colours. Share about these buildings. I didn't know. So we're still here in the UK and the weather's turned, so we're not filming outside, we're filming from inside. And I'm not sure what we're going to do with the children for the next few days because
5 days,
with
5 days of
weather.
rain and cold. Yeah, we went to film this outside and it's just too cold. So, and wet. The camera got wet. So that doesn't sound very sailory, does it?
No, it doesn't. But to get back to the sailing, and you were talking about off-season and the restaurants and things, and I really like I really like sailing in off-season because I do like I like the quietness when it is peak season, when it's July,
Yeah.
August. There's just so
It's
many
crazy,
people
yeah.
around, and yeah, all the restaurants are open, and there's a nice vibe in the air, but also it's just really, really busy. So I really enjoyed that low season.
Do you remember we couldn't find a shop?
It was Paul's turn to provision and do some boat jobs while I entertained the children on the beach and tried to get a bit of work done myself. But mainly, it was trying to stop the boys kicking sand in each other's faces and all over me.
Hey, stop kicking!
It was a very trying day.
After the stresses of the day, Paul and I were relaxing, having some much needed adult time above deck while the children played below. Timo had convinced us to put out the rod earlier that afternoon, and the sound of the fish on the hook disturbed us from our stolen moment of peace and quiet.
Oh, yes!
That is a beauty, Timo. Put it down on the deck. That is a beauty.
Can pull.
Guys, back in, I want to see.
We lifted the anchor and set off for Ibiza. Unfortunately, there was no wind, so we had to motor. At least we got to charge all the children's electronics. Early the next morning, we arrived at one of my favourite parts of Ibiza, Cala Vedea. My friend Annika had recently moved there, and we'd arranged to meet up with her and her family for a day on the beach and a barbecue at her house later.
Good morning, Cala Vedea. We've arrived in Ibiza. Annika, get the kettle on, we're coming for breakfast.
It's really quite easy to get lazy on the boat, isn't it?
Oh yeah. There's not. You can't go for a run when you've got 55 feet of boat to
And
run.
it was too cold to swim then as well.
18 degrees. Well, yeah, you'd burn some calories.
Too cold for me as an Australian to swim.
Oh yeah.
So we try and do a workout every day, or you do a workout most days, and I do a workout nearly most days. But I do yoga,
Yeah.
and I find that the yoga.
And I'm learning.
You're really good at yoga. So I find that the core exercise of yoga, and especially doing headstands on the deck of a moving boat, is a really good workout. And then combined with your more body weight and weighted exercise, it's a really good workout.
Yeah. Yeah, you just keep it going. And if you see people on the YouTube sailing channels, you see a lot of them working out. If you don't, it's become so sedentary a lifestyle, apart from having to move around to stop yourself falling over, you don't do anything. Early in the season, the water's a bit cooler, and in the Mediterranean, where there's cool water, especially in the western part of the Balearics, you have lots and lots of jellyfish. The western side of Ibiza, the beaches turned brown because these are common brown jellyfish. The beaches turned brown because the jellyfish got pushed by the wind on the surface. It must have been, I don't know, several thousand jellyfish just washed up on a little bit of beach. The kids decided that was the best thing to do, try and save their lives.
There's not much footage or even photos of that day with Annika because Annika and I drank a bit much.
Yes, I was obviously in charge of children and boats, and Annika and Nicole were in charge of making sure that the wine reserves in Cala Vedea were diminished at the end of the day. And I've got to say, they took their responsibility on board.
We do.
Paul then paddleboarded back to Savvy where she was anchored and brought back the dinghy to pick us up. What a gentleman.
The next day we got up and went to a lovely beach in a lovely beach restaurant at Calabasa. And we let the children order for their meals. We had the 4 children, and Timo had a seafood platter for 2 that cost, what, €80 for his, and Ralph ordered the filet steak rare. The girls just ordered normally, and it was at that meal that we realised we had to put the kids on a budget,
Yes.
a serious budget.
A serious
a 10
budget.
euro per
10 euro
meal
per meal budget. We gave them a little short education on how much the average person earns and how much disposable income they have, which I think fell on deaf ears. So then we got to...
Timo got it.
Yeah, he did,
with
yeah.
labour, by
He
making
did, yeah.
him
We
work.
made him clean the boat with an hourly rate that was the minimum wage.
16-year-old in the UK.
16-year-old's minimum wage, and he realised just how hard it was to earn money without paying bills. Anyway, we put them on a budget, and each meal, it was quite interesting because they started to do the maths in their head. So if I have that, I can't have dessert or a drink. At that
Yeah,
point,
that's right, because they worked out they could either have a drink and a main or a main and a pudding, but they couldn't have all three for that budget. And so they were really thinking, weren't they? Every
Well,
meal,
yeah.
they're weighing it up.
and maybe part of an anthropological study, but then they started a bartering system where they were giving up money. So Isla became everyone's best friend because she typically
eat much.
eats the least of them, although these days it seems not. She eats the least of them. So she became everybody's best friend, sharing, because you could only carry forward 1/3 of your budget for one meal. I had to put rules around this because they all started working out a bit too quickly, internet generation, you know. So they started bartering. So yeah, an interesting anthropological study that also saved us an absolute fortune.
They did.
You ready? You ready?
I'll pretend I'm not looking. I'll pretend I'm not looking. Don't hit me with it. I think you need a hug. Hello.
I think it's going
I think it might be raining.
That one, no, that one, drink it.
It seems to be raining. It's rather wet around here. My glasses need cleaning.
some April showers.
Yes, apparently.
Do you need some
Not
wine
all
on?
of it, not all of it. Watch out.
Oh yeah, drink half of that.
Well, why did you let us
Don't
do
waste
that?
the water.
I mean, it felt good. I feel a bit. I have a good time. If its head it falls down, it's really good.
I need a hug, Romy. Oh no, I'll tell you what, that's coming back at you. It will be.
Really?
Yeah, no, that bucket there will be
no.
over you if that goes over me.
I just have a little bit. There you go, you're good now. Right, now it's time to run.
Yep, it is, you're right.
Good evening. This is our lovely mooring tonight. It's Calabasa, which is just across the bay from San Antonio. It's really beautiful here. Yeah, we've got, here's the beach where we're playing, and all the kids are now deciding to join me just as I decide to do a video. Yeah. And Paul's doing a workout in questionable attire.
You'll see that Paul likes short shorts. He says they're comfortable for working out in. Combined with his Crocs, they make quite the statement.
Hey, good morning. Well, we woke up this morning and the weather had really turned here in Ibiza, and the flights are really hard to get out and we need to get the kids home. So we thought we would set off straight away for Palma. So it's goodbye to Ibiza and hello to Palma, which I've never been to before. But we're just about to sail through the middle of these two rocks here. That should be quite interesting. My kids are not really very interested in that because there's no Wi-Fi.
I am.
Something about the Mediterranean, everyone's got this picture perfect image of it being lovely flat seas and sunshine, and it is much of the time, but it can come and bite you as well, because in the Mediterranean there's some pretty nasty winds and they do catch people out. I've had some really tough weather. We were heading up, this was early in the season, you do get some very strange winds that come down off various parts of the continent. On this occasion it was a strong easterly for several days. It was 35, gusting 40 knots for several days. And what I know about that is it creates quite a big chop in the sea, and it's not a comfortable place to take 4 children on a boat and sail into, which is what we were having to do. So we had to go and head somewhere for a bit of cover. We were heading for Palma, south of Mallorca. I've been there a few times. It's kind of a bit of a yachting centre of the world. There's so many boats there and some amazing yachts to go and have a look
And it's
at.
good to provision as well.
Yeah, brilliant provisioning, very well protected. It's a nice place to go.
And importantly, we needed somewhere to leave the boat because we were all due back in London. It's just because of this weather pattern coming in, we wanted to get the children back sooner than we'd planned. So Palma's a good place to have the boat for a few days while we went back.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a change of plan. Palma was just too busy with the boat show, and so we decided instead to come to Soler. Look how pretty this bay is. There are 30 knot winds coming in to this bay of Soler right now. As you can hear, it's causing us quite some problems.
I spent the morning trying to entertain the children around Soler, while Paul packed away Savvy, trying to prepare her for the storm.
So in Soler, our beautiful port, we were put, there weren't too many places on the island because of the yacht festival. So we were put on the end of a hammerhead and we were really exposed to the weather. And Soler is a lovely place, but it's known for this swell that builds. And there are all these boats next to each other bouncing around and doing this. We had a bit of it happen. I was quite unhappy. The other problem was they were rebuilding the marina and we were basically on a building site with stuff everywhere, dust blowing everywhere.
There was wrought iron sheets
Yeah.
that were blowing up against this mesh wire fencing. It was really
And they actually
bad.
got blown down at one
Yeah,
point. And
it was very bad.
It was just bad timing. The weather was bad. There's a building site. Fortunately, Matthias on a boat a couple of doors up, lovely guy, a former super yacht
liveaboard,
captain, liveaboard with his family, great bunch, and had I think it was a concrete boat that they were about to put out in the middle. We had got to know a few guys around us. As you do in yachting world, you just go and chat to your neighbours. Everyone's everybody's friend, and said, look, we've got to go away. We're going to take the children home and come back, and then head up out of Soler in a week or so. And so they basically took care of the boat for us.
Back aboard a plane we went to deliver the children back to England. We are back at Gatwick for the second time in the last 12 hours. Yeah, we were here at 10:30 last night, flying back from Palma to drop the kids off, and now we're flying back to Palma.
Yeah, it's a good thing we're not out sailing in this because it really... The wind is absolutely howling outside. We've got winds of over 30 knots and it's really lively in the bay, and this is the reason why we took the kids back to London yesterday. We just didn't want them in this. It's quite unpleasant and it would be quite lively out sailing. So with no children, we decided, as you do, to give the boat a clean. And we cleaned and we cleaned everything. Every last bit of that boat was cleaned.
Yeah.
I don't know why we bothered though, because we were still on a building site.
Still on a building site that night. Dust flew everywhere and covered the boat in dust, but the inside was immaculate.
It was. So we decided that was the time to give a boat tour.
Tour. And to the English among you, that's tour.
A boat tour.
Join us in the next episode where we give you a tour of a very clean Savvy. Please don't forget to subscribe, like and share if you enjoyed this episode. Thank you.